on time for the next talk, which is about Airbus Challenge. Just making sure that Tréboter is with us.
Good afternoon.
Hello, great, good. No, you're there. Wow, you're even on the screen. Excellent. Thanks very much for joining. Quick introduction, because we're very excited to hear about the actual talk. So Thierry Botter is the Deputy Chief of Airbus Central Research and Technology Organization and leader of the Airbus Blue Sky, a research department within the CRT dedicated to emerging transformation technology. He's member of the Strategic Advisory Board for EU flagship program, and prior to joining to Airbus in 2014, he was a researcher at NASA JPL working on quantum sensor. So we are grateful for you to joining us today to tell us about the Airbus Challenge, which is now almost a year that you are launched it. So the screen is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, really excited to be here. So thank you, the organizers, for having me. Indeed, in the few minutes afforded to me, I'd like to share with all of you, as a means to close this session on use cases, how Airbus views quantum computing and how we believe that this technology, this emerging capability, is going to have an important transformative impact in aerospace. So allow me to start by taking a step away from quantum computing and sharing with you a news that Airbus first unveiled in September. That month, we shared with the planet our aim, our ambition, to develop the world's first zero carbon emission commercial aircraft by 2035. So it's a big undertaking, it's a bold undertaking. It is effectively a human first, and achieving this goal will require a large amount of re-engineering, redesigning, rethinking of our aircraft. The picture you see here is the image that was used as part of this unveiling. You see 3 different aircraft concepts, from a blended wing at the tip of the 3 aircrafts, with 2 more standard-looking aircrafts, central fuselage and 2 wings on either side. In all 3 cases, to bring in a new mode of propulsion based on hydrogen will require an important rethink, redesign, as said before, which will inevitably require a very powerful computing system to help us simulate, model, and ultimately optimize one or more of these aircraft designs. And so the key message here is that for what is at Airbus a huge, bold ambition, something generational even, the need for high-performance computing is there. It's an important tool. And it's with that in mind, it's with this necessity of really being able to maximally leverage computing resources that we can connect back to today's talk. So as part of that, we have been keeping a close eye, close attention as to what's been happening in high-performance computing. On the left side of this slide, you see some facts, some observations that have been made. Notably, Moore's law, this approximate doubling of capabilities every 18 to 24 months, is no longer holding completely true. The image shown here was taken from The Economist. Starting in the 2000s, especially around 2010s, we can see a bit of a relaxing, a bit of a slowdown in this rate. And this observation is also echoed by people from the community itself. Quoted here is the CEO of NVIDIA, who himself recognized that the pace at which development is happening on some of the more traditional means is no longer holding true to that famous Moore's law. So with that observation in mind, it's important to already prepare and anticipate what tools, what capabilities will we need not only for the decade ahead, but even as this new zero-emission aircraft comes into the market, what type of resources, computing capabilities will we need? Already there's work on cloud computing, alternative platforms like ASICs, and in some very specific cases, potentially even FPGAs. Neuromorphic computing is part of that, and quantum computing. And this is, I think, an important message. For us, quantum computing is not its own isolated, perhaps even exotic topic, but it's really an upstream extension of our HPC tool belt. And it's in that perspective and with that objective that we were very keen, very interested in engaging with the quantum computing community and helping us understand in what ways this technology can help impact the aerospace industry. And so as shared at the very beginning of my talk, last year we undertook the Airbus Quantum Computing Challenge. It lasted through most of 2019, and what I'd like to share with you is a bit of an update, where we stand today on the challenge and the outlook moving forward. Let me go back to the beginnings of it, sharing with you some of the motivations and some of the objectives that we had. The Airbus Quantum Computing Challenge was set on 5 distinct flight physics problem statements. These are 5 known challenges from what is, for us, a core part of our business. Flight physics is the broad denomination of everything engineering and scientific tied to the flight of an aircraft. So it is, as you can imagine, core to our company. In addition, the challenge was there to try and help us understand what advances quantum computing could bring in the near to midterm. And so effectively lay the groundwork for what we anticipate will be an even broader shift, an even more important shift on quantum over the coming years, and in all of its flavors, not only computing, but also communication and other technologies. And then finally, we wanted to draw ties to the quantum computing community, doing so not simply locally, but really internationally, worldwide. So the idea of an open challenge turned out to the globe was important. And ultimately, it's to draw these ties in order to forge collaborations from which we hope to be able to work with those experts, with those quantum computing talents, to help answer some of the questions facing the aerospace industry. The challenge lasted all of 2019. The submission period concluded in October last year. And by the end of that period, we had accumulated this map. This map gives you key figures about the challenge during its lifetime. Notably, 1,000+ people from over 70 countries, so truly planetary, had expressed interest in the challenge. They had registered to read our newsletters, attended some of the webinars, downloaded the problem statements. From this group, about 160 different individuals, teams, had self-reported being in the process of working on a solution, on a submission. This was around September. And by the end of October, we had finally received 36 submissions, 28 as individuals and 8 as teams. One interesting point, in terms of the profile, the backgrounds of those engaged in the challenge, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen this pie chart. And there's an interesting even split between academia, universities on one side, and companies on the other. And we believe this reflects a transformation that's happening as well within the quantum computing space of more and more talents, knowledgeable individuals coming out of academia and starting to get engaged in various degrees in that commercial space. And so seeing this transition happening was also quite informative and quite impactful. Okay, so with these 36 submissions, we went ahead and evaluated them. And to do so, we brought together what we believe was a fantastic cast of individuals. We had 8 different members from the quantum computing world, reputed members, joining forces with some of our own internal experts to provide a complementary view on the quantum computing merits of the proposals formulated, and as well the engineering impact and the amenability of the solutions from an engineering perspective to help us grow in this direction. So from the group, we were able to identify 5 shortlisted candidates. The original hope or aim was to be able to make an announcement earlier this year about this shortlisted group. Unfortunately, COVID-19 upended much of our lives. It's been a challenging period, especially on a health front, first and foremost, but also as a business, having a big impact on our activities. So we had to shift. We have to shift this announcement. But earlier in October, we were finally able to unveil the 5 finalists. So I'm happy to share with you here again the results. The teams are shown in no particular order. First, Capgemini, a team both from France and the Netherlands, who worked on the 4th problem statement, the wing box design. 2 teams that worked on problem statement 5, the aircraft loading optimization, machine learning reply from Italy, as well as Universidad de Montevideo from Uruguay. Niels Backfish from Germany submitted a proposal as part of the problem statement 3, quantum neural networks. And finally, Origin Quantum from China and their proposal to problem statement 2, computational fluid dynamics. So the story is not over. We have one last important step, which is announcing the winners. I'm excited to share with you that the plan is to make an announcement before the end of the year. For those of you who will participate in Q2B, the Quantum to Business conference happening in December, please do stay tuned. Should be a presentation by Grazia Vittadini, Airbus's CTO, along with Mark Fisher, head of Airbus Flight Physics. So do please stay tuned for more news. I'd like to conclude my talk, and before taking some questions, with talking about beyond the challenge, after the challenge. The challenge, as I said before, was intended to draw ties, draw links to that broader quantum computing ecosystem. But we believe that in order for this technology to really take full form and truly impact not simply the aerospace sector, but other industries as well, it's going to take a broad ecosystem of talents, individuals, entities, all working together. In this slide, I give you a flavor for some of these important groups: education, universities, to try and prepare not only the next generation of PhD students and PhD candidates, but also engineers with knowledge and first abilities, first exposure to quantum capabilities, quantum computing in particular. Governments with funding to support growing startups, companies, universities to master this technology as it continues to evolve. The investment ecosystem, of course, supporting startups grow and in their development process. And finally, industries like Airbus and others shaping this world. And I think on this point, there is an appreciation, drawing echoes to what was said previously in this session, that the problem statements put forward in the frame of the challenge should continue to serve as a reference point, potentially even a benchmark, to try and help us evaluate, measure, compare new, ever-changing, ever more sophisticated hardwares, the algorithms that sit on top. And I think on this slide, the Airbus Quantum Computing Challenge is intended to be a first, but we certainly would relish and see it beneficial for other industries from the pharmaceutical sector, the transportation sector, the energy sectors as examples, to also come forward and to bring forward meaningful problem statements, meaningful examples to which different systems could try and measure themselves and ultimately help drive this overall transformation. So I'm at the end of my talk. If you wish to know more about the challenge, feel free to link up here through the QR code. You'll be brought to our Airbus page with all of the information. And again, do stay tuned. The journey for us continues. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Thierry. This was great. Maybe I follow up a little bit already about this roadmap that you already said. You know, indeed, I know that there was a lot of investment from your own side to set up this challenge, to go through this challenge, and etc. Going through it. So what is the main lesson that is learned, and where do you see that it's going to affect your internal roadmap that you might have within the Airbus for the quantum computing and quantum technology? If you can give us more details on that roadmap.
Yeah. So first, in terms of lessons learned, I think one big observation was the genuine deep appetite from the quantum computing community to be engaged in quote unquote real world problems, real world challenges that we're facing. I think it was very welcomed. The number of participants reflected that. We were really, really positively surprised to see such a great turnout. And so I think it just speaks to that desire, and more challenges of the like, more engagement from industries is only bound to further accelerate this development. For us internally, I think the challenge was very, very important to further capture attention, knowledge, awareness about this new capability, quantum computing. Airbus is a large enterprise, over 130,000 people today working there. It's not always easy or straightforward to bring awareness to such a broad group of people about an impactful, transformative technology. The challenge was kind of a lighthouse, a way to draw attention to this. And what we're seeing today is that for us, there's already work underway to draw closer ties, to bring more, not simply awareness, but first exposure of quantum computing to some of our computing experts, individuals who day-to-day have to deal with some of our more challenging computational problems, who don't necessarily by background have that intimacy with quantum computing, but nevertheless to become more aware, more engaged, and even first exposures to that technology. So I think this is an important part of the transformation underway. And as I said, the challenge is a first step with, I think, more engagement, more activities to come.
Great. So since the whole theme of today has been scalability all the time, and also the theme of this particular session that you're closing is about use case. We discussed a lot in the previous panel of how to link between the question and user question, actually what is available. So my question is that, do you think this method, this challenge that you set it up, initiate, is a scalable technology in the sense that, do you think that's the best way to continuously link end user that coming from you with the potential people who might come to solution, or more kind of close collaboration? Of course, could be all of this, but it's very interesting to see the effort that you put inside this. Is it something you want to repeat? You think that this is the right way for now? Is it a scalable approach?
Yeah, I think for us, we were very proud of the challenge. We're happy with the outcome of the challenge, and we're looking forward to moving forward with the winners in furthering their proposal starting next year. To your question, should there be more challenges, and will there be more challenges? I think certainly I've had echoes from fellow colleagues in different industries that this challenge was also inspiring to them, and perhaps an example to follow for their own entities. I think whether or not this happens, the fact that the challenge was open, transparent, and tried to bring two different communities, I think that recipe as a fundamental, as a baseline element, is quite powerful, and it can take on different forms. I talked about benchmarks at the very end of my presentation. I think this could be a new way, a new form to connect end users like Airbus with the quantum computing community in a different flavor, in a different way. One, to also help industrial players like Airbus, who are not necessarily experts or day-to-day developers of quantum computers, to be able to assess and understand the promise and potential of one versus the other. So I think to bring all of these thoughts together, the key elements, that connection between the quantum computing world and the end users is essential. And I think that is an important aspect to keep. The form that it takes, having a challenge versus a series of benchmark versus potentially something else, I think that's more open, that's more flexible. Any steps that brings more proximity and more connections between those two communities will simply help further accelerate that transformation.
Great. Thank you very much. And surprisingly, we're still on time, you know?
Yep.
So this is
so
great.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. We will take a break, but do come back. There is the grand finale talking about the ecosystem in France with the various exciting talkers coming back. So see you guys back in...
half an hour.
Half an hour.
Yep.
Half an hour.
4:30 Paris time.
Thanks again, Thierry.
You're welcome.